So kind of related to the last video, looking at the problem space that a design system can address and how we can be more conscious of that. I think the natural lead on from that would be, if we understand the problem, maybe we understand what good looks like. And so giving us that sense of not yet metrics, but how do we know that it's going to work? How do we know we're actually addressing the problem? And so there's lots of different ways we can do that. But part of it is being quite clear on what we can and can't measure. So if you think about, if we say the problem that we have is that we're not efficient, now how do we measure that? If you're not already measuring something like, I don't know, sprint velocity or time taken for given tasks, which you probably aren't, then you don't have a benchmark of data. So how can you prove that using the design system is going to somehow make that more efficient or faster? So sometimes it's taking a realistic view, I think, and saying, well, maybe if we can't get actual data, maybe the second best is qualitative data. Try and spend some time with the product owners or product teams or delivery managers, whoever you have, and try and get a rough idea of the pain points. Try and work out, if even anecdotally to begin with, where do they feel they're stumbling? Where are their concerns with delivery? Because I think then, even if you can go back to the same people and say, do you feel the design system is making it better? Or they volunteer this information. I mean, these are anecdotes. They're not data in the same way. But I think sometimes it's worth looking at the human experience more than pure metrics. A lot of this stuff we can get metrics for sometimes, but they're a little bit flaky. I mean, for me, one thing would be, if we look at adoption, what does good adoption look like? And I think that becomes a problem if you're trying to measure it. Because if you say that we have a tool that goes from 0 to 100 of, is the design system adopted? What does good look like there? If you had 100% adoption, that almost implies that there is nothing else but components from the design system. And to me that says there's no experimentation, there's no trying out a new approach, there's no kind of creativity. And so does 100% look good to you? Maybe you could put a finger in the air and say, actually maybe 75%, 80% adoption is good. So I don't think necessarily metrics like that can be particularly helpful in telling a story. Maybe what we want is to find out, well, what teams are consuming from the design system. Maybe there's something around what kind of components. So people are consuming lower layers like buttons or form inputs. That's great, but why aren't they using the higher level components? Do they not exist for that particular team's needs? Or do they just feel like they need to solve their problems their way? So something that tells you a story. Kind of thinking about that, it's been quite clear that we should use hypotheses behind any of the data. So we need to start with a hypothesis and look at what data, qualitative or quantitative, that can help us prove or disprove. And for a lot of us, we don't have a background in data analysis. So this is all kind of a new area. So it's trying to be quite clear that, again, using the adoption example, if you have either 0 for no adoption, 100% for total adoption, I'm not sure that really tells a story. So it's trying to think a little bit more clearly about what information, what data, what anecdotes or anything can help give us an impression of, are we going in the right direction? Are we addressing the problem that we defined with our problem space?